Lila had always been a bit of a loner. In Cedar Heights, where everything moved fast, she preferred the stillness of her own company. It was in the solitude of late nights that she found comfort browsing dark corners of the internet, reading horror stories, and listening to eerie podcasts. But one night, the line between fiction and reality blurred in a way she could never have imagined. It started on a cold October evening. Lila was returning home after her shift at the bookstore, the streets almost empty, save for a few passing cars. She decided to take a shortcut through an alley she'd used countless times before. But tonight, something felt different. The air was thick, oppressive, and the shadows seemed to cling to the walls like living things. Halfway through the alley, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting a message from her mom, but instead saw a text from an unknown number. "It's watching you." Lila froze, her heart thudding in her chest. She looked around, scanning the alley. That's when she saw a tall, hooded figure standing at the far end, its face obscured by darkness. It didn't move, but she could feel its eyes on her, cold and unblinking. Her phone buzzed again. "It knows where you live." She swallowed hard, her mouth dry. As she watched, the figure took a step forward, the sound of its movement absent, like a silent film playing out in real life. Lila turned and started walking back the way she came, quickening her pace with every step. Her phone buzzed again, and this time, the message was more insistent: "Run." Without thinking, Lila broke into a sprint. The alley seemed to stretch on forever, the exit growing farther away with each stride. She could hear nothing behind her, but she felt that the hooded figure was closing in. Her phone buzzed repeatedly now, vibrating in her hand as the messages flooded in. "Don't look back. It's almost here. It wants your eyes." Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. She didn't dare look at the screen again, fearing the next message might be worse. She burst out of the alley and into the light of the main street, gasping for breath. The figure was gone. But the fear lingered, gnawing at her insides. Lila raced home, constantly checking over her shoulder, expecting to see the figure lurking behind every corner. She finally reached her apartment, slamming the door shut behind her and locking it with trembling hands. She tried to calm herself down, telling herself it was a prank, someone messing with her. But the messages, how could anyone have known where she was? Her phone buzzed again. She hesitated, but curiosity got the better of her. She glanced at the screen and nearly dropped the phone. "I'm inside." The air around her grew colder. The lights in her apartment flickered, and she heard a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from her bedroom. Tap, 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 like fingernails on glass. Lila's breath hitched as she slowly made her way toward the sound, the floorboards creaking under her weight. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. When she reached the bedroom, the door was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness spilling into the hallway. Her phone buzzed in her hand, and she glanced down at it, her blood freezing in her veins. "Look in the mirror." The tapping stopped abruptly. Lila hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to run, to get out, but something stronger, something malevolent pulled her forward. She pushed the door open, and her breath caught in her throat. In the darkness of the room, her reflection stared back at her from the mirror on the opposite wall. But it wasn't right, it wasn't her. The figure in the mirror wore her clothes, her face, but its eyes were black voids, and a twisted, unnatural smile stretched across its face. Then, slowly, the reflection began to move on its own, stepping closer to the mirror's surface while Lila remained frozen in place. It reached out, placing a hand against the glass, and the lights in the room flickered again, plunging her into darkness. The room was silent, save for the faint buzzing of her phone. Lila fumbled to turn on the flashlight, casting a shaky beam of light across the room. The mirror was empty. Her reflection was gone. Her phone buzzed one final time, and she didn't want to look, but something made her. The message was simple: turn around. Lila's heart stopped as she felt icy breath on the back of her neck. She could feel it, the figure, standing right behind her, its presence dark and overwhelming. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. The lights flickered on just as she slowly turned around, and there it was, the hooded figure, towering over her, its face still hidden in shadow. But now, it was close enough that she could see into the darkness of its hood, where two empty black voids stared back at her. It reached out with long, skeletal fingers, brushing them against her cheek, and she felt her vision dimming, her consciousness slipping away. The last thing Lila saw was her own reflection stepping out of the mirror, wearing that same twisted smile. The next morning, Lila's apartment was silent. The door was still locked from the inside. The only sign that something was amiss was her phone, lying on the floor in her bedroom. On its shattered screen, a final message lingered. Now I am you. No one ever saw Lila again. But sometimes, late at night, when the lights flicker and the room grows cold, people swear they see a hooded figure in the shadows, watching with eyes as black as the void.
That's the end of today's story. Thank you for watching. If you like our stories, you can also subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out any new stories and videos. Hope to see you soon.